extending 25 meters from the ship. Special teams are exempt and should beware of low gravity. Expect some dizziness and look out for static charge. All departments and operational during this phase signify by beeping twice.
If everything's ready here on the dark side of the moon, play the tones.
Danny is a good friend of mine. At the time, I met him through another local rapper called Peter Pay. And then a few months later, or a year or two later, I ran into Cooley C. We all had our little downtown crew, and Danny and I were working on a song called That's the Way I Like It. We put together the rough demo at my house. I had a TAC tape machine, and he had an SB12 drum machine that he brought over there, and I think we had Cooley C's 808, and we shopped the record. I actually shopped it to the Bass Station, and they loved it. We were going to have a deal on Bass Station Records, and Danny, he decided that he really wanted to go with Beware Records. So it was a thing where Danny and I sort of parted ways. There was no bitter breakup of the act at all. It was just business decision. He wanted to go with Beware Records, and I went with Bass Station.
Bass.
At that point, I had an idea for Dynamix to be like a two-man act with a good friend of mine. His name was Lon Alonzo, sort of like the Latin Rascals or some of the remixer groups that are from New York that were doing medley-style remixes. And we sort of ventured into this, another thing where I started thinking to myself, maybe we should make it remixer group / Kraftwerk, like America's answer to Kraftwerk kind of a thing, where we just focus on bass music, but with a lot of electro influence. So a few months later, Lon and I wanted to bring him down to Miami. I think we brought a mix that we did down there. They liked it. And the next thing you know, we've got our deal with Bass Station Records, and we're going in the studio to record, give the DJ a break, and the flipside, Straight from the Jungle. We would go to a different used record store and start going through classic records to record samples, and that's where we met Gordon Chin. Gordon Chin was the 12-inch buyer for Uncle Sam's off of Sample Road. We'd talk about records, and he would bring stuff to our attention. Well, did you hear this song? He was sort of like our historian to electronic music. And with techno bass, the thing that inspired me, I was a big fan of Juan Atkins, of course, and I would say it was probably the longest track to finish. It took us 7 months to record this thing. By the time it was done, we wound up going with Gordon Chin into a studio to record Feel the Bass and Techno Bass. And Gordon was part of our distribution channel. He just made the introduction between us and Jerry Basson and H&L Records. And it was thanks to Gordon that, made those introductions. And Gordon actually was distributing it for a limited time himself, selling COD boxes of our records, around the country.
We lost it in a radar blind spot.
Oh no, they're going at it again! Say what? Oh no! Here we go!
My whole inspiration growing up was skating rink music, that up-tempo electronic sound of John Roby, like Looking for the Perfect Beat by Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force. Lon Alonzo was really into hip-hop. He liked, of course, everyone liked bass at that time, and he did the programming on Feel the Bass. The hook on that song is actually Fresh Pit Ice. It was in the SB1200, and back at that time, I think you had 10 seconds in the SB1200 of sampling time, so you had to make everything count. The drops and all the scratches, those were a 50-50 venture. We got together in the studio, and we both laid down scratches. So, that was Feel the Bass, Lon Alonzo, and that's why when, we parted ways, Lon naturally, given Feel the Bass the rights for that, and we ran with the DJ break and techno bass. We're bass generator would be more Debonair's baby, ignition would be more mine. And when we mixed it in the studio, I remember, we would have like a white noise sound that was on one track, just a noise going. And we would just sweep it, and as we were sweeping through it, it would just sort of sweep through the sound and go shoo. And, you move to the right, it would go back up. I think I was on the drum machine, and Debonair was back there on the actual mixing board with Scott Goldman, and they were sitting there sweeping these two sounds back and forth the whole time we were recording this. And I just remember looking back and seeing Debonair's face. He's so animated. Claudio, he just reminds me of like a Muppet almost. He's really funny and very. He's really enjoyable to be around. When you're around him, it's like nothing but smiles. When I did Don't Touch That Dial, I wanted to further expand that whole Dynamix II sound into more Kraftwerk-oriented electro, John Roby style electro, so I took the Space sound effect record and had a loop going where it just sounded so cool. That's the thing that's on the bonus beat. Then I said, well, I'm going to have to like put a bunch of drop-ins in there to keep it, true to the whole master mix sound.
It's DJ Scratch D, and I'm back in the place with Breezy Beat rockin', and you know we got that bass, so get with it, party people, cause you can't deny Dynamix is in the house, and here's the reason why.
Feel the Bass got us into Power 96's Power Wars, where it was like a contest on Power 96. They play your song against some other song every night, and Feel the Bass won over Def Leppard. And at the time, if you know any history about like radio, you'll know that rock songs always win. But for whatever reason, I think that the kids were just overwhelmingly calling the radio station to vote for our songs because everyone wanted bass. We were winning for like a week and a half, 2 weeks or something, and then Breezy Beat MC came up there and knocked us off with Shake the Joint. When I heard it, I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome. At that point, we were working on the songs for the album, and we wanted to remix Give the DJ a Break, and at the same time, Breezy Beat MC just happened to be in that studio recording something else. I think it was No Money, No Girlfriend. And I ran into him, we talked about, maybe could you do a rap? He said, sure, I'll throw one down for you, and it just happened that easy. He laid it down that day, and that was it.
Shake what you got.
When I made Purple Beats, I was listening to the Beastie Boys, Slow and Low, that is the tempo. I was on the floor, I had the SB12 with me, and I made this pattern, and it was a little bit faster. It was doom, doom, da doom, 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 da doom, and I go, And I remember slowing the tempo down, and I kept on tapping it. 118 beats per minute, 117, 116, and then I get down to like 80 beats per minute, and I'm like, whoa, man, it's so much more powerful and slow. And I thought to myself, yeah, slow and low is the tempo. As soon as you start doing it slow, there's more space between the sounds where the bass can cavitate. If you listen to it, it's very experimental, whereas, a lot of the IDM people today, like Tanisha, the guy in the UK, Richard James, from Aphex Twin, they love the little blip sound that I did. That they just thought that was the best thing since sliced bread.
Experience real fear.
So you fear it. That was a whole different sound for us. At the time, I had just met Scott Weiser through a local rapper. Scott was more into industrial music, Front 242, Nitzer Rev, and that sound. We wound up going to that nightclub to check it out, drink some beers, and we teamed up to work on some music. So it started my an experimental music stage of Dynamix II. You Hear It also sort of marked that start of the era where we wanted to push into the car audio market. And it sort of made sense to do that because we just saw the popularity rising in it, and that's where You Hear It as an album crossed over to at least 2 or 3 different genres. It was really nice.
What's the situation now?
I don't know. I don't know.
What's the situation now?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, Scott and I programmed Ignition 2.0, and it was just a time when we would sit there like a worker in a factory. We would sit there at the desk and program for what seemed like infinity. I would sit there and write patterns for a little while. Scott would have his headphones on, and he would sit there and make parts in his keyboard. He would record them and bring them into a song. And sometimes I would take a step away, and he would get on the drum machine and start sequencing some stuff as well. You know, he was just completely gifted in the fact where he had a photogenic memory, so he never really had to write too much down, you know, whereas I would work on grid paper a lot to form my ideas and how I was going to arrange the song. He would just know and just go right through it, which I would resent him for that to this day. I hate his photogenic memory. It kills me. Playing this event. It was called The Bomb. It was held in this huge auditorium. They had us in this rising stage, and the stage itself was hooked up through electronic pulleys to go all the way up to the top of this thing. And I would say minutes before we went on stage, we hadn't been paid our balance. So they took us into the back room and were counting out our money, and we were both wearing these Air Force flight suits that were black. So we looked like 2 Pillsbury Doughboys filled with cash. And we ran last minute into this thing that brought us up to the top of the whole auditorium. And then when they announced us, they started lowering this thing down, and it gets caught. And as it gets caught, it starts jerking up and down. And I'm going, oh my God, we're going to die. And I look over to my left, and Scott is completely freaking out. Meanwhile, there's like all these like fire shooting out of this thing, and sparklers coming out of this thing, and confetti and glitter. I mean, dude, we're just covered head to toe in all this crap. And now the stage that we're on, we're swinging back and forth. And there's a guy in there trying to control the pulley system with some kind of electronic thing. But from down on the floor, they thought that that was all part of the act. It's like, oh, wow, look at them. They're killing it.
We are the future. We are the future. We are the future.
That was when we sort of got together with Will Webb from Detroit. He was on this record label called Direct Beat. And Will was a Billboard reporter and still is till today. And he was heavily tied into the music scene in Detroit. He was down in Miami, and we met him in the conference, and we talked about, working on some projects, collaborating together. So I said, we'll let you do a remix of We're Your Future. At the time, We're Your Future didn't have a hook to it. There was no a cappella. And Will Webb, for his remix, had made a hook for it. Well, when we heard his remix, we decided that we really liked his hook. So we took it. We asked him for the a cappella, and that became the hook on We're Your Future. So the actual voice on We're Your Future is Will Webb.
We are the future, 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 future.
I wound up doing a record with Oscar Zayas. He goes by the name of Oz. Oscar is a New York DJ that came down here, and he's also a Billboard reporter, and he was working at Specs. And Oscar also worked at the Danceterium with James Wolfe. And when I did the Plastic Man, Oscar was the one that came over to my studio and listened to what the sequences that I had and helped me arrange it. And basically in closing, if anyone needs to get a hold of us or get a hold of me, you can just go to dynamixii.com, or you Google our name, Dynamix II. The website will pop up with a connection to me. And thank you for buying our music. Our music is available globally through 700 plus digital retailers all around the planet. Enjoy it.